Some Chinese solar firms are halting production at Southeast Asian factories as Washington steps up actions to protect its domestic market. Now, LONGi Green Energy says it's making adjustments to its plans following reports that it started slowing activity at plants in Malaysia and Vietnam. There's another company as well. Trina Solar is shutting capacity in Thailand and Vietnam in part due to U.S. demand. Let's bring in a Bloomberg Opinion columnist, David Fickling. He has a column out this morning saying that the speed of the energy transition could easily make people underestimate the scale of the challenge that lies ahead. He joins us now. David, always great to have you in the program. You're saying that President Biden, when it comes to U.S. policy, is wrong to say that we have too many solar panels. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at three of the major statements that he's made on this and sort of fit them together and see why there's a bit of a disjunct. I mean, you know, one promise is that the U.S. grid will get to zero emissions by 2035. A second one was this announcement made at the G20 by the U.S. and China last November, that there was going to be a tripling of the amount of renewable power in the world by 2030. And then finally, as you refer to, is the commentary about the sort of Chinese clean tech industry, that it's suffering from this sort of predatory overcapacity, pushing prices artificially low, more panels and batteries than the world can need. Now, the three of those don't really fit very well together. I mean, there has been this very rapid increase in renewables in recent years, so it's easy to assume that we're actually close to getting to those targets. But actually, if you look at some of the numbers, this is not overcapacity. This is just the basic capacity that we need, and actually not even as much capacity as we do need to hit those targets of tripling renewables by 2030 and getting a net zero grid in the US by 2035.
Okay, well, there we go again with longer-term projections, David, and not you. Certainly, whenever I hear, though, someone try and quantify how much money is needed, the job at hand, they lose me immediately with a big number. And I'm wondering now, do we have a better idea of what we need to, where we need to be, and whether or not we're capable of then building towards that objective?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, the International Energy Agency this week did an analysis of this, and I'll try and not use too many big numbers. But the amount of renewable power in the world at the moment is about 4,000 gigawatts, 4,000 nuclear power stations equivalent. That's roughly doubled over the past 7 years, and it needs to more or less triple, as we see this tripling, over the next 7 years to about 11,000 gigawatts. Now, we're not producing nearly enough to get to that. That was the main conclusion of the IEA's report this week. And if you look at the capacity that's out there, the numbers look very big, but really we've got capacity to produce about 800 gigawatts of solar panels and about 150 gigawatts of wind power. So that totals a little bit less than 1,000. And of course, we need about 7,000 over the next 7 years. So we barely have enough. We certainly don't have enough wind power. And if you look at those announcements that we were just talking about just before this about some of the closures of solar facilities in Southeast Asia and some of the troubles that the Chinese solar industry is going through, if you factor in a lot of that stuff, we're still, as the IEA argued this week, we're still well below the capacity that we actually need.
So what can the U.S. do then, David, to turn this picture around? I mean, barring lifting tariffs, but what else can they do?
Well, I mean, I think there's lots of stuff. If you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, there is lots of stuff that relates to exactly what they need to do, and there is a very broad spectrum operation coming out of Washington to solve this, with things like clearing up permitting. The amount of renewables waiting to get connected to the U.S. grid is greater than the amount of generating capacity on the U.S. grid as a whole at the moment. So there are these huge bottlenecks, a lot of which are to do with permitting, are to do with grid access and that sort of thing, some of which are to do with finance. But you can't ignore the tariffs issue. It's clearly something that's not going to change. It's an election year issue, and it's not going to change imminently. But ultimately, the US installed about 33 gigawatts of power, of renewable power last year. It's about 1/10 of what China did, and it needs to really increase that rapidly to get to this 2035 net zero.